Pop quiz. When would you want to intentionally spend your higher level spell slots on the shield spell? Answer, when you're a freaking nigh unkillable artificer wizard tank. That's when. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4, I like to take a deep dive every week into a specific character build for my favorite role-playing games. I like to crunch numbers about them, I like to theorycraft about them, not so that I can tell you the right way or the best way to play a character, but to explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that's both really fun, but also really powerful to play. So if you also enjoy creating characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you just like theory crafting, or if you're looking for tips or ideas on how to build something that you're thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I'm so glad you're here. So thanks for watching. My name's Colby. Right, so we need more tank builds, don't we? And what better place to start than revisiting my two most popular tank builds of all time? And it's not even close, by the way. The Armorer Artificer tank, right up there, and the Abjuration Wizard tank, which came a few months later. Who would have thought my most popular tank builds were gishes? I mean, I have more views on the Artillerist Artificer build than I do on even my third most popular tank video, which is the Bladesinger tank, of course. Yeah, okay, fine. I have a type, and that's probably why you're subscribed to the channel. Anyways, yes, I love both of those old tank builds, and the great news is this. Abjuration Wizards got some serious love with the 2024 Player's Handbook, and what's more, those old builds are old. There's kind of stuff we could be incorporating into an updated Abjuration tank, not just from 2024, but from, say, Monsters of the Multiverse, right? Good old mom. The bad news, however, is that Artificers didn't even make it into the 2024 Player's Handbook, as most of you know. Yeah, saving them for the first, expansion pack, as it were. Fortunately, we've got two now Unearthed Arcana releases on Artificers, so I think that even though I don't typically do Unearthed Arcana builds, we're probably fairly safe to use the latest UA version of the Artificer that we've gotten from Wizards of the Coast, I think. I mean, yeah, it didn't stop me from making a Dreadnought build a while back, right? But before you leave the video, because you don't like Unearthed Arcana stuff, don't worry. The stuff we're going to be using from Artificer and relying on to make the build work really hasn't changed at all with this Unearthed Arcana. So even if you can't use UA stuff at your table, as long as you can use the existing Artificer, you're going to be just fine. Now, before we jump in, let me talk a little bit about some changes that I'm making to the way I crunch numbers for tank builds, if you would. For those who don't know, historically, when we get to the damage reports, right, that I always do at level 6, 9, 13, and 17, for tank builds, I've pitted the tank against three hypothetical encounters to test their survivability. Using the old Dungeon Master's Guide encounter builder rules, I created a medium difficulty encounter like boss fight against a dragon, a kind of typical fight against usually 4 or 5 fairly run-of-the-mill kind of normal-ish bad guys, and then a level appropriate fireball or later meteor swarm. I'd calculate how much damage our tank would take in a round if they had access to all of their resources and the enemy or enemies did nothing but attack them, right? We called that our DTPR, or damage taken per round, and then I would calculate how long our hero would survive if they took that much damage every round and called that our RTD, or rounds to die. I'll be honest, I haven't loved those numbers, especially in the last year or two. The DTPR I'm actually fine with. It's the RTD that bugs me because, yeah, we don't always have access to all of our resources, first of all, especially at low level, right? And it felt weird to say, okay, so at that level of damage, our tank would survive for 37 rounds or whatever, because what the crap? No encounter lasts 37 rounds, and so the number kind of felt meaningless and weird. I've really felt a lot better about our damage builds, like our DPR builds, in the last few months since changing, after many requests from several of you, to calculate DPR based on a 4-round combat encounter. And so I kind of figure, why not do the same for tanks? I think it's a lot more useful for us to know, sure, how much damage would we take every round on average over an actual fight that we might find ourselves in, and then simply figure out how many hit points we'd have left at the end of that fight. That way we can know, at the very least, if we actually have the resources to survive for 4 rounds, and figuring out how many hit points we had left at the end of the fight might give a more useful idea on just how good the tank was at taking a hit in a conceivable combat encounter, yeah? So let's do that and call that new number HPR, or hit points remaining. So now we've got DPR or DTPR and HPR. Sound good? Oh, and thanks to Nalian and Solterina in the Discord server for the HPR suggestion, by the way. I like it. So, okay. With the new monster manual, monsters hit harder than ever, and the difficulty encountered in the new Dungeon Master's Guide is allowing for tougher fights. Just to lean into that a little bit then too, I'm going to increase what I'm pitting my tanks against from moderate difficulty to high or like deadly difficulty, because, come on, this is supposed to be an optimized character, right? And something tells me that most of you, especially if you're only having 1 or 2 combat encounters per day, are probably having really tough fights, yeah? So let's use the monsters from the new monster manual and the encounter builder from the new DMG, crank it up to high difficulty, and see just how well these theoretical characters can perform when stuff gets a little scary, shall we? All right, I proudly present then D&D episode number 210, the Abjurer Guardian, the Wizard Tank 2.0, the Arcane Guardian, the Magitech Armorer, the Tank Mage, the Warded Warden. No, thanks to everyone in the Discord for the suggestions, but we all knew it was over when Nalian came up with the Full-Metal Abjurist. Holy crap, that is so good. So that's what we're calling it. Huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the fantastic artwork that he put together for this build. He does this every week. I love what he does. I love this kind of almost goth-looking tank that he put together here. It's so cool. If you'd be interested in following Randall to check out the other stuff that he does, or to maybe even try and commission him to create some art for your character or even your entire party, I'll put links in the video description, as always, on how to do so. And also, hey, everybody, guess what? The Humblewood series is getting a sequel. That's right, Humblewood, the most adorable TTRPG setting of all time, published by Hit Point Press, the sponsor for today's video, has a new project in Kickstarter right now, at the time of this video release, called Humblewood Beyond the Canopy, where you get a chance to go past the edges of the wood and into the wider world of Wesden, and it looks, I mean, as amazing as you would expect. Holy crap, the art that these guys put out is off the charts. Anyways, here's what you need to know. The campaign setting book is standalone, first of all. It doesn't require the first Humblewood book to play, though seasoned Humblewood players can easily pick up their adventure from the first book if they want. It is compatible with 5e 2014 rules and has support for 2024, so either way, you're good. Inside, you're going to find over 250 pages of wonder. First up, loads of new player character options, including a new class, awesome. It's called the Gadgeteer. It has 3 subclasses, and it looks like a real Tinkerer's Delight, which feels appropriate for the character build video today, by the way. There's 3 new subclasses, which I can't wait to check out. The Deep Roots Sorcerer, focused on drawing, storing, and redirecting power from the energy of the world around you. Feels to me like maybe a bit of a druid sorcerer mix kind of thing. You've got the Oath of Mysteries Paladin, focused on uncovering and hiding secrets, like a Detective Pally. Little Batman-esque, maybe? And then there's the Wrangler Monk, let's go, focused on being the best beast and monster handler this side of the Mississippi. Or this side of the Humblewood? That's what the river's called, right? Anyways, there are also 6 new races, including the cat-based Eluron, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Elderon maybe, and the weasel and ferret-inspired Mustel, I could die. New subraces like the Arma Hedge, who look like pangolins and armadillos, come on, and even 4 new backgrounds, like the Stone Singer and the Wonderstruck. I'll tell you who's Wonderstruck. But yeah, I mean, there's way more than just player character options here too, right? 4 new regions to explore in the continent of Wesden, including an ice-covered archipelago and a grassy sea, an entire religion section with both new amaranthines and new folktales, new spells, over 40 monsters and NPCs, including Humblewood's first giants. Oh, I can't wait to see what those look like. And of course, a brand new adventure that takes players from levels 5 to 8 on a world-traipsing romp to uncover the mysteries of the aspect of water, save the frostburned, and battle an ancient evil. If you guys can't tell, I'm super excited for this book, and I hope that you are too. If you are, or if you're at least curious, please go check out the Kickstarter. When you do, I would appreciate it if you would use the link that I've put in the video description and the pinned comment as always, so that they know I sent you. I'm confident that if you back them, you will be ever so pleased with what you get for your hard-earned dollars. And yeah, backing them during Kickstarter is so smart because it can get you awesome goodies that you're not going to get otherwise, so don't delay. Okay. Massive thank you to HPP and the folks at Humblewood. I'm incredibly grateful for your support and am in love with the stuff that you create. All right, let's get back to the build. At level 1, for our starting class as a spellcaster, if we're going to be taking some artificer levels early, and we definitely are, starting there is always worth considering since artificers get constitution saving throw proficiency, and that means better concentration checks, right? But also, yeah, as a tank, getting a foundation in artificer is going to be super important for this build. For our species here, I think the absolute frontrunner, and really for almost any build where you're prioritizing survivability overall, is, yeah, the updated Shadar Kai that we got in Monsters of the Multiverse. They not only can teleport 30 feet as a bonus action, proficiency bonus times per day, always awesome, but after doing so, they have resistance to all damage until the start of your next turn. All damage. That's incredible. And it's even better on an Abjurer now than ever before, though we won't be getting to why for a hot minute. Now, if you play at a table where you tend to have a lot of difficult combat encounters per day, or you can't or don't want to use the Shadar Kai for whatever reason, I would go with the Mark of Warding Dwarf if you can, as a backup, simply because they get access to the Armor of Agathis spell, and that spell is amazing. If you can't or don't want to use the Mark of Warding Dwarf, then I think I would just go with the regular old 2024 Dwarf for the extra hit point that they get per level, plus poison resistance. I'll assume that we've gone Shadar Kai when I crunch the numbers, and no, we don't want to go with the Stone Giant Goliath here for their damage reduction, even though I was tempted, because that feature costs our reaction, and we definitely need our reaction. Okay? Okay. For our background, I would, if I could, for sure use like an old background or a custom one if allowed at the table, because it's the only way to get the origin feat that I want and the ability score increases that I want. If you can't do that, I would probably go farmer. Probably. Because the origin feat that I want is tough, naturally, on a tank, right? Which gives us 2 extra hit points per level, and that's amazing to get that right at level 1 now. But as for our ability scores, yeah, I'd say going the point buy method is always take a 15 constitution plus 2, a 15 intelligence plus 1, a 13 charisma, and a 12 dexterity. Now, the charisma is not necessarily a must-have, and we won't even need it until later, so hang tight there. And let me just say this, hopefully one time for the whole video. Okay, that's probably a lie. I'm going to repeat this, I'm sure. But anyways, with tank builds, more maybe than any others, I tend to build with an eye to the spreadsheet and feel like if I were actually playing the character in game, I'd probably make different decisions, right? Case in point, yeah, if it were me, I'd probably favor intelligence over constitution here. It's going to help us hit stuff more, it's going to make our spells better, right? But if I'm trying to just explore the limits of what's possible from a survivability standpoint, then yeah, I'm going to prioritize survivability overall, just to kind of see how far we can stretch things, not necessarily to say this is the best thing to do for this build, right? So yes, I'm going to max Constitution on this build in the name of science, though I would likely make a different decision in game, and you should do what you think would be best for your character too, even if it means, in this case, yeah, slightly less survivability, okay? As for starting equipment, we're gonna wanna grab some scale mail, for now anyways, and a shield, and then just like your favorite D6 simple melee weapon. We'll be upgrading that scale mail later, but at level 1, artificers just have medium armor proficiency, right? As for the weapon, yeah, you know, your favorite D6 simple melee weapon, assuming you want to be in melee from the get-go with this character, which I think I would, personally. As an Artificer 1, then, we get, Tinker's Magic. They've changed this a couple of times in Unearthed Arcana now. Currently, it says that we automatically know the Mending cantrip, that's nice, and that intelligence modifier times per day, we can use a magic action to create a mundane item from a long list of basically adventuring gear, and that the item lasts until we finish a long rest. I'll admit, I'm changing my mind a little on this one. I originally thought, hey, this is fine, right? I think I kind of miss the old magical tinkering, if I'm being honest. It was just a little more flavorful, a little more fun. Ah, well. Either way, it's pretty much a ribbon. For the spells that we get at this level, I would for sure grab True Strike, first of all, so that we can attack with that simple melee weapon that we've got using our intelligence now, right from round 1. I'd also want Thorn Whip, I think, to potentially grab enemies and pull them closer to us, hopefully away from our squishier allies, right? That's a total tank move. And then Firebolt or Ray of Frost for a ranged attack if needed. Otherwise, Cure Wounds is a nice heal. Fairy Fire could be a decent use of concentration right now, potentially giving advantage on attacks against enemies affected by it. False Life is a nice source of temporary hit points to increase our survivability. And, Sanctuary can be situationally useful to throw on an ally to help keep them safe. You know who I'd really like to keep safe in my Sanctuary? These are just getting better every week. My channel members and patrons, because I have a Patreon now. So quick shout out. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for your support. Could not do this without you. If you are not a member or a patron, I'd love it if you'd consider becoming one. There's a button down there that says join for YouTube membership thing and a link in the video description for potential patrons. Follow those links. You can see what perks you get access to by supporting the channel, including, access to the library of write-ups that I do for each of these builds, access to the community Discord server, access to the live monthly Q&A hangout sessions that we do each month, and that's tomorrow right now as I'm recording this, and I'm super excited. I love those Q&As. So yeah, if you can't or don't want to support in that way, that's totally fine. I appreciate that you're just here. Watching, liking, subscribing, all those things are also great ways to support the channel, so thank you. At level 2, we get Replicate Magic Item. This tells us that we can learn 4 plans from a list of magic items and have any 2 of them created at any one time, and that any wand or weapon created by the feature can be used as a spellcasting focus, which is nice. As for, which magic items I would plan on using, sure, I'll say let's go with a +1 weapon and a +1 shield. Boring, I know, and also, admittedly, a little problematic. I've talked about this a lot lately, but maybe just real quick, yeah, by the time we get to our first damage report, there's a decent likelihood that you could have a +1 shield, maybe even better. And so by me accounting for it on this build, when I crunch the numbers, when I wouldn't for other builds, can be a little problematic. At the end of the day though, no, I don't really know for sure if your non-Artificer character would have a +1 shield if they wanted it, even if the likelihood is high, so I'll continue to crunch numbers in a way that slightly favors Artificers in this regard, and continue to plead with Wizards of the Coast in these videos that they bring back infusions, but let them work on items that are already magical. Please let me add a +1 to my already +1 shield. It's not that powerful, it really isn't. But it does keep me from having to go, well, I guess I'll just make a Sending Stone. I know. Those other magic item options are cool and fun and even potentially useful and powerful. Doesn't change how I feel though. So at level 3, we get our Artificer subclass, and of course we are going Armorer because they're probably the best tank in Dungeons & Dragons. Yeah, I said it. Okay, actually, the World Tree Barbarian might be the best now, and I did a video on them. That's the only other tank build that I've done for 2024 rules, right? Check it out there. I mean, at least at keeping their allies safe, if not necessarily survivability. More on that later. That build was a lot of fun and good. But yes, armors are amazing. They get a whole slew of features here. First off, Tools of the Trade gives us proficiency with smith's tools and heavy armor, plus halves the time it takes for us to craft armor, which might be useful depending on your table, depending on if you have downtime. So yeah, it's time to don that plate or scale mail that you've been eyeing. The key feature for us here, of course, is the Arcane Armor feature. This lets us turn the armor that we are wearing into something amazing. It removes the strength requirement for wearing it, so we could wear plate and not worry about it. Lets us don or doff it with a single utilize action. Makes it so the armor can't be removed against our will, and even lets it function as a spellcasting focus for our Artificer spells. We then get to choose from one of 3 now armor models. the Dreadnought, the Infiltrator, and the one we'll be focusing on, of course, the Guardian, though we could swap out our armor model if we wanted after just a short rest, which provides some fun versatility. As a Guardian, though, we first of all get Thunder Gauntlets. This tells us that each of our armor's gauntlets are considered simple melee weapons that hit for a d8 plus our intelligence modifier, since yes, we can use our intelligence for attacks with them. Awesome. If anyone from Wizards of the Coast is watching, please, 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 before this leaves Unearthed Arcana, could you make those weapons light? Or give the Guardian some way to dual wield them, because the way it stands with the dual wielder feat, we have two weapons, but we can't use them both on the same turn. Anyways, better yet, and most importantly for our tanky selves, any enemy hit by them has disadvantage on attacks against anyone other than us until our next turn. And yeah, this is what we've come to call our soft taunt, right? Not a lot of hard taunts in D&D 5e that just force an enemy to attack you, but the whole point of a tank is to be hard to kill, not just for the sake of being hard to kill, but because we're trying to get the enemies to attack us instead of our allies. And this is one of the best ways that we have of doing so. And worst case scenario, even if the enemy attacks our friends instead of us, regardless, at least they do so with disadvantage, meaning we are helping to keep our allies safe, right? We also get a defensive field as a Guardian, but it's changed slightly in the Unearthed Arcana. We can still use our bonus action to give ourselves temporary hit points equal to our Artificer level, but we can now only do so if we're bloodied or, at half health or less. And spoiler alert, we're not often going to be bloodied on this character. And by not often, I mean maybe never, or at least not until things get really sideways for us in a combat encounter. One nice thing though, we're no longer limited to how often we can do this. So if it is a really tough fight, we can potentially get some free temporary hit points every round, as long as we're below 50% health, right? Finally, armorers get a couple of extra spells at this level. For us, it's Magic Missile and Thunderwave, a couple of decent damage options if we need them. At level 4, we get our first general feat, and we are going to be taking Heavy Armor Master. And I always loved this feat on tank builds, but it's better than ever in 2024. First off, it's a half feat that now gives us an option to bump Constitution if we want, not just Strength. Hallelujah! So that will bring our con up to 18, awesome, and then also it actually scales a little. It says that if we're hit by a bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage attack while wearing heavy armor, we can reduce the attack amount equal to our proficiency bonus, not just locked at 3 anymore. That's awesome. It'll do really nice things for our survivability. And especially now that it can bump our con by 1, I think it's a no-brainer, even if you're kind of trying to maximize your intelligence on this build. At level 5, as an armorer, we get extra attack, and this was honestly the main reason why I wanted to stay armorer until this point of the build, rather than, beeline for Abjuration Wizard right after we got our subclass. Abjurers get some awesome survivability tools, and I really want to get to them, but if we're in melee and the primary way we have to keep our allies safe involves us hitting our enemies to put a debuff on them, I just have a hard time imagining not doubling the number of attacks that we make every turn, both to try and increase our likelihood of landing at least one of them on the most important enemy, right? Or if we're in a group, to ideally put that debuff on 2 enemies, right? We do get some important second level Artificer spells here as well, though, and another big reason I wanted to get to 5, most important of which is Aid. This not only increases the maximum hit points of 3 of our party members, including us potentially, and scales by 5 more for every level we upcast it, but it's importantly an Abjuration spell. And yeah, we're going to want that before too much longer, right? Other than that, I would be grabbing Lesser Restoration, also an Abjuration spell for a quick little cure-all, and probably Web for control and, invisibility for utility. The new Homunculus Servant spell is kind of cool if you're looking for a little pet who can potentially make some attacks or scout for you, etc. But at level 6, with extra attack and second level spells secured, yes, it is finally time to start taking some wizard levels. Why is our hero so keenly interested in clockwork magic and smithing and metal suddenly interested in becoming a wizard? I don't think it's too hard a stretch from a character concept point of view. I think I would have made this character's primary motivation in life protecting others at all costs. Heck, maybe they're a windrunner, right? They feel like their tinkering and crafting has taken them as far as it can, and realize that the best way for them to protect themselves and those they hold dear is to delve even more deeply into the arcane that up until now they've maybe only caught a glimpse of, infusing it into their creations. They want to take their magical prowess to the next level and really unlock their protective capabilities. As a Wizard 1, then, we get Ritual Adept, which just says that we can cast any ritual spell as a ritual so long as it's in our spellbook. No need to have it prepared, and that's awesome, so grab all the ritual spells you can, right? And then there's Arcane Recovery, which still lets us recover spent spell slots equal to half our wizard level rounded up once per day after a short rest. Finally, we get wizard cantrips here, and first level spells, of course, and I would grab Find Familiar, sure, and yeah, Silvery Barbs and Sleep, and or Hideous Laughter for control, right? But the most important ones for us, of course, are Absorb Elements, so that we can, with a reaction, have resistance to elemental damage types for a round, assuming we're a Shadarkai and didn't, use a bonus action to teleport, because then we'd just have resistance to everything. And then, yes, Shield, so that we can, with a reaction, add 5 to our armor class when we are hit with an attack, potentially causing that attack and any others until our next turn to miss. Importantly, Shield and Absorb Elements are both Abjuration spells. Finally, we want to make sure and grab Blade Ward. This spell got a big change for 2024. It now requires concentration, lasts for a minute, and simply subtracts a d4 from any attacks made against us. That's basically a 2.5 increase to our armor class, right? Pretty fantastic. And I'll actually assume that we're concentrating on it for a while in the name of survivability, though sure, you might prefer to concentrate on web or something else, and that's totally valid. So, it's level 6. Time for our first damage report. Since I've already explained how I'm going to crunch numbers now and how it's different, go back and watch the intro, all you slackers who skipped it. Let's go over our current survivability capabilities and talk about our hypothetical encounters. With Tough and an 18 Constitution, we have 62 hit points right now. Add 5 for the aid spell, and let's say we cast False Life at the second level on ourselves before battle. That would be 19 more for a total of 81. Not bad. Our armor class with plate armor and a +1 shield is 21, and so long as we've got spell slots for shield available, and our reaction, of course, we can get that to 26. Also, I'm assuming we're using Blade Ward on ourselves to reduce an enemy's hit chance by a d4. And don't forget, with Heavy Armor Master, all bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage against us will be reduced by 3 every time we get hit. Finally, assuming we went Shadarkai, for 3 of those rounds, because we've got a 3 proficiency bonus, right? We can use our bonus action to teleport and then have resistance to all damage until our next turn. As for encounters at level 6, are you ready? For our boss fight, assuming a party of 4, our high difficulty encounter is going to be a CR9 Young Blue Dragon. That used to be our boss fight at level 9. And you know what? Let's go ahead and assume that we get hit by their lightning breath once in the fight. Part of what makes this creature a CR9 is for their special attacks and abilities, right? We should include them. I haven't in the past. Even if this means more math work for me, that's fine. For our typical encounter, we'll be going up against 3 trolls. And then, yes, we will still look at a DC 14 third level fireball as well. So if that young blue dragon did nothing but just attack us with all of its attacks every round, except for the one time it was, using its breath weapon, our damage taken per round would be 9. And at the end of a 4-round combat encounter, we would then have 46 hit points remaining. Against those trolls, we would take 3 damage per round and our HPR would be 70. And against a fireball that we just got hit in the face with for 4 rounds in a row, we would take 11 damage on average and end the fight with 36. That might be the only time this character gets bloodied, actually. Check me on that as we go. Okay, is this good? I mean, I don't really know how it compares to other tank builds I've done because I've totally changed the way that I'm crunching numbers and the fights are totally different, but the DTPR at least looks in line with some of the best tanks under the old rules and calculations, especially if we take out the breath attack I'm including now, and those fights were a heck of a lot easier. So yeah, this feels really solid. Now, compared to the one other 2024 tank build I've done to date, right? Yeah, that World Tree Barbarian, I'm actually going to talk about that at length in the final thoughts. So let's just say that we are faring a lot better in the survivability realm than that World Tree Barbarian build would when pitted against these same encounters. To be fair, again, that World Tree build was better at being a juicier target for enemies and at kind of controlling and rooting enemies to keep their allies safe, and better at damage too. So yeah, there's always a give and a take here. Maybe they're better at filling their role as protector, arguably, even if they die quicker. But again, more on that in the final thoughts. Don't go look at the spreadsheet yet. You're going to spoil it. Regardless, I love where we are at right now with this build, and I love knowing that even for deadly encounters, we could take the brunt of all of our enemy attacks and, not even get bloodied after 4 rounds again, unless somebody was just hitting us with the fireball every single turn. And that's awesome, right? So let's see where we can go from here. At level 7, we would be a Wizard 2, and that means we get Scholar. This gives us expertise in either Arcana, History, Investigation, Medicine, Nature, or Religion, if we have proficiency first in one of those, that is, and that's all we get at Wizard 2. A little painful, if we're being honest, but hey, at least thanks to multiclassing, we get a couple of 3rd level spell slots now for upcasting Aid, among other things. At level 8, though, we would be a Wizard 3, and now we get our subclass, of course, and yes, as I've said, we are going with Abjurer today, and it is awesome. Since it's my first time using them with the new rules, let's read the updated flavor text, shall we? Shield companions and banish foes. Your study of magic is focused on spells that block, banish, or protect, ending harmful effects, banishing evil influences, and protecting the weak. Abjurers are sought when baleful spirits require exorcism, when locations must be guarded against magical spying, and when portals to other planes of existence must be closed. Adventuring parties value abjurers for the protection they provide against a variety of hostile magic and other attacks. Perfect for who we are and what we do. As an abjurer, then, we first up get Abjuration Savant, and these, Savant abilities have been hugely improved for 2024 for all subclasses. We now just get 2 free Abjuration Wizard spells of level 2 or lower, and whenever we gain access to a new level of spell slot in this class, we can add another Wizard Abjuration spell for free. Now, here's a question I have. It says that the chosen spell must be of a level for which you have spell slots, but compare that to the wording we get, for example, from the Lore Bard's Magical Discoveries feature. There it says, quote, "A spell you choose must be a spell for which you have spell slots, as shown in the Bard features table," meaning that the spell in that case can't be of a higher level than the Bard spells you have access to, right? But that, as shown in the Wizards feature table wording, is conspicuously left out here for, this Abjuration Savant ability, meaning, I think, that if you're multiclassing and thus have higher level spell slots, you might be able to take a higher level abjuration spell when we gain access to a new level of wizard spells. That is, as a Wizard 3 now, we've just gained access to a new level of wizard spells, right? 2nd level wizard spells, but we actually have 3rd level spell slots, so maybe we can take 1 3rd level abjuration wizard spell here if we wanted. Obviously, check with your DM. That might not be how Wizards of the Coast intended things, but it clearly seems to work, rules as written at least. If so, congratulations, you can get Counterspell at this level, right? Anyways, the real reason we came Abjuration in the first place was, of course, for the Arcane Ward feature. And this got some love in 2024 too. Here's how the ward works. Anytime you cast an abjuration spell of 1st level or higher using a spell slot, now specifically, so no more cheesing this with Warlock's Armor of Shadows invocation, right? Then we add points to our ward, which acts like a shield for us. Think of it like another layer of temporary hit points. Whenever we get hit, the damage gets applied to the ward first. We get 2 times the spell's level added to the ward, again, as long as it's an abjuration spell. The maximum number of hit points that the ward can have is 2 times our wizard level plus our intelligence modifier, so that's 9 for us right now. It's not huge. There are 2 changes to the ward for 2024. First, we're now told that if we want, as a bonus action, we can just expend a spell slot to buff the ward for 2 times the spell's level, as though we had cast an abjuration spell, right? That can be handy if we really want to buff our ward, but don't necessarily need to cast an abjuration spell, right? The only problem is, yikes, that's a pretty expensive way to essentially get some temporary hit points. A 3rd level spell slot for 6 hit points to our ward, I would use this with caution. I'm not saying I would never do it, but yeah, if you had Healing Word, you'd be better off using your bonus action to just heal from that instead if need be, right? If you were missing hit points anyways. Still, I appreciate the option. And we don't have Healing Word. Maybe we should have gone Magic Initiate Cleric or Druid. What's better, though, is that the ward very specifically gets to benefit from any resistances we have, which wasn't the case in 2014, as was specifically stated in the old Sage Advice Compendium. And these two things together are the main reason I decided to go Shadar Kai on this build. Yes, it's a bonus action to teleport and thus grant ourselves damage resistance, and that potentially conflicts with buffing our ward, right? But spending a spell slot just to get 2 times the spell's level in hit points added to our ward is a really break glass in case of emergency kind of thing. And frankly, we'll get a lot more mileage out of just using that bonus action to have the damage against us, right? Especially now that the ward itself can benefit from our resistance. Plus, we'll get to hold on to more of our spell slots and only use them when we actually need them, like to cast Shield or Absorb Elements. Those things will buff our ward, and yeah, kind of like I teased in the intro, this might be the one time where you don't really mind spending higher level spell slots on the shield spell, right? Because hey, if you drop a 3rd level spell slot on it, well, you get the benefit of the spell and get a few more hit points added to your arcane ward as a result. Nice. And no, for the record, I'm not actually suggesting that you do this in-game if you have 1st level spell slots available. I'm just saying that you don't mind doing so as much as other casters would, and maybe in the name of science we might see what happens if we were to do something so silly. Finally, at this level, we get 2nd level wizard spells, and rather than go over all the great options wizards can get here, I mean, you know about Misty Step and Hold Person and Invisibility, let me just focus on the abjuration options. There are only 2. Arcane Lock is handy if you really want to make sure a door gets locked, situationally useful at best, like if you're Treant Monk's party trapping an enemy in a room with Moonbeam. That was hilarious. Don't know if you guys saw that video. Why didn't the bad guy just try and break the door down? Anyway, I might pass on that spell personally. Then again, we get a lot of abjuration spells for free, so maybe. But Arcane Vigor is pretty nice. It's new for 2024 and lets us use a bonus action, nice, to heal ourselves. Maybe we didn't need Healing Word after all. Now, you have to use 1 or 2 of your hit dice here and then heal for what you roll plus your spellcasting modifier. But in a pinch, it's not a bad option to have. And yeah, again, it's going to buff your ward, so you get a lot more out of it than other wizards would. Now, at level 9, I'm going to take 1 more level in Artificer. You don't have to. In fact, if I were playing at a table where I either already had some great magical armor or I felt confident that I could get some soon, whether because I was crafting it myself, I'm an armorer after all, or because I was going to purchase it or find it in a dragon hoard or whatever. Because yes, at Artificer 6 we get level 6 infusions, right? And that means we can get, among other things, a +1 armor, which will raise our AC. But hey, even if you already have magical armor, you don't need this, there are plenty of other great things here. Chief among them, in my opinion, is the Mind Sharpener, which says that a few times a day, when we fail on a concentration check, we can just succeed instead. No roll needed, and man, that is powerful. Especially in those instances when you take massive damage, like from a dragon's breath attack, for example, and just couldn't succeed on the concentration check regardless of your roll. Well, now you can, and it's super potent. You could also swap out your +1 weapon and +1 shield for the Radiant weapon, which is still +1 but also sheds light and can potentially blind enemies, and the Repulsion shield, which is still +1 but also can push an enemy back when they hit you. So yeah, still some good reasons for taking 1 more level in Artificer. Also because of the new magic item Tinkerer feature, which gives us some nice versatility. It says that we can use a bonus action and a spell slot to add charges to a magic item that we've created that uses charges, right, like a Mind Sharpener, or use a bonus action to consume a magic item that we've created to give ourselves spell slots, or use an action to transform one magic item that we've created into another one that we have the plans for. Pretty cool way to be a bit of a Swiss Army knife there and actually make use of the plans that we know but don't typically use. Very cool. All right, this brings us to our level 9 damage report. Since last check, we've done a lot to increase our survivability. +1 to our armor class thanks to magic armor, higher level spell slots that will be used for us on aid and to give ourselves, more temporary hit points. And most importantly, an arcane ward that will give us, at the moment, only a 9 hit point shield, but that will improve. So I'm going to assume that we start off combat with a full shield. Aid at the 3rd level will get us 6 hit points added to the ward, right? Meaning we just need a couple of 1st level spell slots burned or 1 2nd level spell slot. You might not think that's worth it. you might rather just wait until combat starts and see what you might need to be casting, right? Use shield when called for, or absorb elements, etc., to just add a little bit to it when you want. And in fact, I am going to go ahead and assume that we are casting shield or absorb elements every round, and let's just pretend, again, in the name of science, that we're upcasting those at the second level while we have the spell slots for it, to give a little more life to our ward. I'll still assume that we've got Blade Ward active. Again, you and your party might benefit from another concentration spell here instead, and that's fine. I'm just trying to maximize survivability. Also, with a proficiency bonus of 4 now, we could theoretically use our Shadar Kai teleport for resistance on every round if we wanted. I'll assume we are, though you might want to be more judicious if you think you're going to have multiple combat encounters, or this one that you're in doesn't seem particularly difficult, right? Our AC then is going to be 22, 27 with shield, and our total hit points, including aid, our ward, and let's say, sure, some temporary hit points from an upcast false life spell, which scales by 5 hit points every level we upcast it, would be 151. That's almost double last time. At this level, the XP budget for a deadly encounter for a party of 4 is 10,400 XP. So for our boss fight, let's do an adult white dragon. And yeah, fine, let's go ahead and assume they're in their lair and they get all their legendary actions every single round. We'll say they're gonna just make 4 pounce attacks on us every round, right? Since that does more damage than their freezing burst does. In addition to their regular 3 attacks and then 1 cold breath blast. Might as well crank it up and see how much we can really withstand. I'm a little scared, or at least I was when I was writing the script. As for the typical fight, let's go with 4 pirate captains. Why are there 4 pirate captains in the same room? I don't know. Maybe we crashed their secret pirate captain planning party, I guess. This is just an exercise, people. I'm looking for fairly straightforward enemies here. Okay, fine, never mind. 4 wyverns. They're pretty nasty. And then a 5th level fireball with a 15 DC. So against that adult white dragon, the damage taken per round against us would be 12. Only 12?
You might as well give up.
They're making 7 attacks every round. Yeah, 12. At the end of the fight, we'd still have 103 hit points left. The typical fight is even better, 8 DTPR and 119 HPR, and that fireball was going to be 14 damage taken per round and 93 hit points remaining at the end. And I will admit, I did not expect to be doing that well, especially against that adult white dragon in their lair. But the truth is, our high armor class plus that Shadar Kai resistance to all damage is really doing a ton of work. And yeah, if you often have more than 1 combat encounter per day at your table, you'll want to save those teleports for when you really need them. But even if, say, on the typical fight, we were taking double the damage, right, against those wyverns because we didn't want to burn our teleports, or didn't have them for that matter, I mean, we'd be taking 16 damage per round and still end the fight with more than half our health. And that's if all those wyverns were doing was just attacking us and nothing else every round, which, as much as we would love that, yeah, they're unlikely to actually be doing that, right? So I'm feeling really durable at the moment. Let's see what else we can do. Okay, at level 10, I really want to get back to wizard levels, but I think I maybe take a warlock dip here. And that's why I wanted the 13 charisma. This is by no means a no-brainer. I'm not even 100% sure that I want to do it for this build, honestly. But here's the thing. Armor of Agathis is a really good spell. It gives us 5 temporary hit points for every level we upcast it, and it returns cold damage when we're hit in melee. Now, the truth is that's actually less temporary hit points than False Life would give, so maybe don't bother. But Armor of Agathis has something going for it that False Life doesn't. Aside from the damage return, it's an abjuration spell. False Life is necromancy. This means we've got another really solid pre-combat way to max out our ward, and it just makes a lot of sense to me to take it. It's why I said to consider the Mark of Warding Dwarf as your species if it's available at your table, right? So that we don't have to spend a character level on Warlock. Not to mention the 13 charisma that we needed. Again, don't do this if you don't want. It's not a big game breaker either way. I wish there were more ways to grab this spell, but it's hard to come by. But actually, there is another big reason I have for taking a Warlock dip, and it's that we now get 1 Eldritch Invocation, right? Right at level 1, and that means we could grab Eldritch Mind to give us advantage on our concentration checks, and that's a pretty big deal, almost as good as the Warcaster feat. Especially if we didn't have the Mind Sharpener infusion, I'd want to prioritize this. But also, yeah, we get Warlock spells and a spell slot that resets on a short rest, which means, more castings of shield, among other things. So all in all, it's not a bad single level dip, if you can spare it. I'm going to assume that we are, meaning that then at level 11, we'd finally get back to Wizard. We'd be a Wizard 4. That means we get a feat, and we can finally bump our Constitution and cap it at 20. Though, yes, again, you might want to have been bumping Intelligence instead, which is totally great and a viable option. I mean, yeah, we're barely ever getting bloodied on these high difficulty combat encounters, right? If that seems to be your experience playing this character too, then I'd especially say go for Intelligence first. Don't forget, thanks to multiclassing, we do get a 4th level spell slot at this level as well. At level 12, we would be a Wizard 5. That means we get the Memorize Spell feature, which says that anytime we finish a short rest, we can replace one of our non-cantrip spells with a different one from our spellbook. Some nice versatility there. And then we get those all-important 3rd level Wizard spells, which we've waited way too long for, no doubt. The Abjuration spells to consider here, I think, Counterspell and Dispel Magic, of course, always great to counter enemy casters and nasty spell effects. A Glyph of Warding might be useful, though it does take an hour to cast, but you put a triggering area of effect down and then it goes off to cause an explosion or the effect of a different 3rd level spell. It's pretty nice if you've got the time to cast it and you know that you're going to be in an area where you're going to want it, right? Magic Circle with a 1-minute cast time can be a nice way to protect you and your allies if you know you're going to be fighting Celestials, Elementals, Fae, Fiends, or Undead. But aside from those spells, I also want to highlight 2 very good tanking spells here. Slow and Haste. Slow is, for my money, the best tanking spell in the game. I haven't always thought about it that way. It's a control spell, right? It is, but man, does it do wonders for both your survivability and the survivability of your entire party, which is what a tank is supposed to be worried about, not to mention the damage output of your party against the enemies, right? Not only that, but it's such a powerful debuff that it's going to do wonders for drawing enemy fire, which is exactly what we want happening as the party's tank. I mean, it reduces enemy AC by 2, cuts their move speed in half, prohibits reactions, and then on their turn they can only take a bonus action or an action, and if they have multi-attack, they can still only make 1 single attack. That is just devastating. Oh, and it can even make them fail to cast a spell if the spell has a somatic component, potentially. The problem with Slow is that it's not guaranteed to work. It allows for a Wisdom save, which is generally good for us, but at least against boss fights from this point on especially, those bosses are going to have legendary resistance, and so I kind of don't even want to bother casting it, So in that case, I'd potentially want to start concentrating on Haste instead. That gives a +2 to our armor class, advantage on dexterity saves, and 1 more attack on our turn for more taunting capability. It feels perfect. That said, I probably wouldn't use Haste either unless I had that Mind Sharpener, I think, since losing concentration means a round of being incapacitated, which is brutal. But I'm going to assume that we do. I mean, surely we have a +1 weapon or shield or armor by now, if not better, right? So we could spare the infusion. So going forward, I'm going to assume that we're using Slow on the typical fight and Haste otherwise. Okay, at level 13, we would be a Wizard 6, and as an Abjurer, that means we get Projected Ward. And this is a fantastic tanking ability, even if it doesn't do much for our own survivability. It lets us use our reaction to let our ward take damage instead of an ally within 30 feet. We're kind of throwing our ward, right? If the ward gets reduced to 0 hit points, any carryover damage applies to our ally, but if they have resistance, it applies before you deduct damage from the ward. So just like it does for us, right? That's super cool. Or yes, actually, vulnerability too. I've conveniently not mentioned how that applies to the ward as well, which is fine. We don't get vulnerability all that often, knock on wood. And that then brings us to our next damage report. Since last check, we have theoretically capped our Constitution modifier, gained some better spell slots for upcasting of Aid and Armor of Agathis now, added either the Slow or the Haste spell to our tanking arsenal, and increased the capacity of our Arcane Ward by a few hit points. Our AC with Shield is still 27, though of course you may have a Cloak or Ring of Protection or something that raises that, right? Or 29 if we're using Haste. Our total potential hit points, upcasting Aid at the 5th level, Armor of Agathis at the 4th, and then spending 4th and 3rd level spell slots for Shield and Absorb Elements during combat, which is loco, would be 236 hit points. Our XP budget for a high difficulty encounter, party of 4, is 21,600. So for our boss fight, let's do an adult red dragon in their lair. The typical fight will be 3 bandit crime lords. We need some humanoids in here at some point, right? And yeah, with their fairly low wisdom save, I'm going to say 2 of the 3 of them are slowed. The other one gets their full turn. And then there is the DC 16 level 7 fireball. So against that adult red dragon, the damage taken per round for us would be 21. And at the end of the fight, we would have 151 hit points remaining. The typical fight, DTPR was 18 and the HPR was 166. And the fireball, we're doing better than ever. It was only a 16 DTPR and 174 HPR. And while, yeah, stuff is hitting harder and harder, we've got more than enough durability to outlast a 4-round combat encounter here, still not even getting bloodied. That feels kind of amazing. So let's see how it looks coming down the home stretch. At level 14, we would be a Wizard 7, and that means we get 4th level Wizard spells. The Abjuration ones to consider, I think, would be Outtakes Resilient Sphere. It requires concentration, but is a fantastic way to make one creature basically impervious to damage if you really need to protect someone or something. Or, I don't know, set up a bunch of exploding barrels on the exact spot that Raphael is going to spawn before the fight starts, and then hide inside the sphere while you just one-shot the entire room. BG3, cheese tactic. Take a drink. Banishment can be a potent single target control spell, right? Especially against otherworldly beings, and yeah, is Abjuration. Mordekainen's Private Sanctum is a fun little way to protect yourself for an upcoming rest, but yeah, otherwise pick your favorite 4th level spells here like Dimension Door, Polymorph, etc. At level 15, we would be a Wizard 8. We get another feat so that we can finally, for the love of all things holy, bump our intelligence. And of course, if you've been doing that all along, no worries. Feel free to grab, say, Resilient Wisdom or Resilient Dexterity here, or, you know, bump your Constitution now, etc. Don't forget, thanks to multiclassing, we have a 6th level spell slot now. At level 16, we would be a Wizard 9, and that means we get 5th level Wizard spells. The only Abjuration spells for Wizards here are Circle of Power for some serious party buffing, giving a 30-foot aura of advantage on saves against spells and other magical effects, and even letting us take 0 damage on a successful save if we would otherwise take half, right? Nice to have if you know you're going to need it. Kinda wish you could cast it as a reaction, but maybe that would be too powerful. I don't know, it's a 5th level spell. Anyways, Planar Binding is the other one if you really want to bind an otherworldly creature to your service. Use with caution. Beyond that, yeah, I mean, take Wall of Force, right? You'd probably be doing a much better job of keeping your party safe by trapping those bandit crime lords behind an invisible force field, right? Or whatever other 5th level spells you might want. Finally, for us, at level 17, we would be a Wizard 10, and that means as an Abjuration Wizard, we get Spellbreaker, which got some buffs and some nerfs over the old improved Abjuration feature. It says we now have Counterspell and Dispel Magic always prepared, which is a nice way to free up more preparations. It lets us cast Dispel Magic as a bonus action, adding our proficiency bonus to its ability check only, not to counterspell, right? And I mean, that's awesome. A bonus action to dispel a nasty spell that we have a nice bonus to our check on, and that buffs our ward at the same time. That's sweet. Bummer that we don't get to add that proficiency bonus to counterspell anymore, but hey, if either spell fails to stop or negate the spell that we're trying to cancel, we don't spend the spell slot anymore, which is pretty great. Finally, we get a 7th level spell slot here now too, thanks to multiclassing. So this brings us to our final damage report. Since last check, our AC is going to be the same, 27 or 29 with shield, depending on if we're using haste or slow, and we've otherwise just increased our potential hit points by gaining wizard levels and higher level spell slots. With aid cast at the 7th level, eek, and Armor of Agathis at the 6th level, squeak, with a maxed out arcane ward of 24 hit points, that we would potentially be refilling with 5th and 4th level castings of shield and absorb elements, insanity. Our total max hit points would be 317. Dang. Go wizard, go. Our XP budget for a deadly encounter at this level is a whopping 46,800. Holy cow. So our boss here is going to be an ancient green dragon. Oof. Not in their lair though. The typical fight would be against 4 ice devils. They have a solid wisdom save, so let's say only 2 of them are slowed, 2 of 4. And then yeah, a DC 17 meteor swarm that for some reason we're subjected to every round for 4 rounds. I hope we survive. Well, we will, because against that ancient green dragon, the DTPR would be 34 and the HPR would be 182. No sweat. That typical fight, the damage taken per round was 23, the hit points remaining was 169, and even against Meteor Swarm, we would be 55 DTPR, that's a lot, but still leaving us with 98 hit points after 4 rounds of Meteor Swarm to the face. I think that's the lowest we've gotten, taken as a percentage of our health, but, and yeah, like that ancient green dragon got us close to bloodied, but yeah, I mean, bring on 7 attacks per round from an ancient green dragon and a big old poison blast to the face. As long as my companions can actually manage to kill the thing, we're good. And we're mostly a wizard, Harry. All right, so I have a lot of thoughts here in the final thoughts to go over. First of all, the tier score for this build, if you just take their hit points remaining for every fight at every damage report and just average it into one single number, you end up with 122. Meaning that, we'd have an average of 122 hit points left after the fight was over at these levels for these particular encounters at least. That feels pretty great, but how does it compare to that beast of a World Tree Barbarian with almost 400 hit points by the end of their career, huh? Well, for those of you who didn't cheat and look at the spreadsheet early, their tier score, a -6, meaning that, on average, they were not surviving a 4-round combat encounter based on those ones that I put together, which is a stark contrast to how they were performing previously when I had them going up against what would be considered moderate encounters based on the 2014 Monster Manual and DMG, right? So, I have so many thoughts about this that it really should be its own video. Let me see if I can keep it to less than 5 minutes here. After going through this exercise, comparing a couple of tanks to one another, trying to build for survivability with the new Monster Manual, the new DMG, I've got 4 takeaways. Takeaway number 1, when it comes to survivability, the order of importance in most combat encounters is going to be AC, followed by resistance, followed by hit points. This is not really new information, but sometimes I think we forget how much better it is to not get hit at all than to get hit but have a lot of hit points and ways to mitigate the damage, right? This character's armor class was about 8 to 10 points higher than that World Tree Barbarian, and even though they both had resistance to almost all the damage, the Barbarian thanks to Rage and being a dwarf, this character thanks to the Shatterkai teleport, right? And the Barbarian had significantly more hit points at every level. The fact that the Barbarian's AC was so much worse, and of course that I assumed they were attacking recklessly and thus giving advantage to their enemies, right, which is a huge deal, it meant that that Barbarian was just getting decimated by comparison, often dying on round 3 in some of those combat encounters. Takeaway number 2 is that as much as I kinda hate to say it, and again, no surprise to a lot of people, even when it comes to survivability, if they focus on it at least, spellcasters are outperforming full marshals yet again. And if you've been watching my tank builds for the last few years, or just, I guess, paying close attention to D&D 5e in general, you knew this already, and it kind of bums me out. As awesome as a Raging Barbarian with resistance to tons of damage and tons of hit points can be, being unable to concentrate on or cast spells is a bit of a death knell for their survivability by comparison. And sure, if they weren't attacking recklessly, they would have performed a lot better. And sure, a fighter who could wear heavy armor and get the heavy armor master feat would perform even better. And if we had lots and lots of combat encounters, the spellcaster's probably going to run out of spell slots, and so maybe things even out, right? But even then, I think a full marshal is going to struggle to keep up with just the pure durability potential of a character with spells. It's a bit of a bummer, I think, as much as I love Gishes. But this is important. Takeaway number 3 is this. At the end of the day, survivability does not a good tank make, right? This character, as durable as they are, might not have been as good at protecting their team as that World Tree Barbarian was. We could do our soft taunt, but unless we were concentrating on a really debilitating control spell, which we could do, but usually at the expense of our survivability, right, then we weren't really doing a ton to protect our allies. That's kind of the main reason why I kept saying things like bump your intelligence instead, or concentrate on something else instead, because as fun as seeing how hard to kill we can be is, During actual gameplay, if you're trying to be your party's tank, it's often going to be less important to be uber durable than it will be to control your enemies, pull them, root them, knock them down, encourage them to attack you, right? I think that Barbarian was better generally at that role, unless, again, you sacrificed some of your own durability as this Abjuration wizard to do other things, which, again, you should totally do. And finally, takeaway number 4. I freaking love how much more difficult encounters are now in D&D. I love that Barbarian build was going down in a lot of those fights. I was seriously giggling with glee when I was crunching the numbers, because that means that D&D is improving the challenge it's posing to players. I mean, come on, if an encounter is supposed to be deadly and every single enemy in the encounter just focus fires on one character, that character should go down, even if they're supposed to be hard to kill, right? And also, I mean, I should say, that never happens, right? Every enemy just focusing on the tank, and even if it did, surely we have someone in our party who can heal, right? So that Barbarian is probably fine most of the time. Anyways, yes, thank you, Wizards of the Coast, for ramping up the difficulty here. I love it. And I freaking love this build. A tanky, mech-like, protection-focused wizard? Come on, so cool. And so dang unkillable. You could and should not worry quite so much as I did about your survivability and focus more on making life miserable for your enemies and protecting your allies when enemies get away from you. You'll still be really hard to kill and will have so much fun just charging into the fray, teleporting all over the battlefield, taking hit after hit, and just laughing it off every time while you punch and control and debuff to your heart's content. But that is the build for the week. This one took me a long time to write, thanks to all of the changes I was making and the number crunching for 2 different builds, but I had a blast with it. I hope you did too. I hope you know that I love you. Thank you for watching, for supporting everything that you do for me and the channel. It means so much. I hope you have a fantastic day and a really great week. And if you don't, I hope that you will not give up. Please hang in there. You've got this. I hope that you will do good and be kind, and that I see you again very soon. But until then, take care. Bye. Gotta get out of bed and get a hammer and a nail. Learn how to use my hands. Not just my head, I'll think myself into jail. Now I know a refuge never grows from a chin and a hand in a thoughtful pose. Gotta tend the earth if you want a rose. Spring is for indigo girls. I'm telling you, you just want to get outside. You want to get into the mountains. You want to just get some fresh air and some sunshine, take a road trip. You know what I mean? Got my Knucklebusters t-shirt on. I was in a band once, kind of, briefly. We called ourselves the Knucklebusters. We made t-shirts for ourselves and our 3 groupies. It was awesome. Seemed kind of appropriate for a build that is, mostly punching stuff. Let's start that over. Don't give me notifications. Okay, yeah, go away. Oh, I played pickleball today for an hour and a half. It was. Oh my god.